Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever G Money Sports Pick'em Show. My name is Grant Martin, and I'm the face behind G Money Sports. I started this blog as kind of just a labor of love a couple of years ago, just to share my love of sports with the world. Something I'm super passionate about, always have been, and now that sports betting has kind of become more streamlined, legalized, it's something I've gotten into the last couple of years, and it's something I really enjoy. So hopefully my Twitter page, Facebook group, and now my YouTube page will keep you guys coming back for more, and hopefully we can grow this brand and see what happens. Before we get into the picks here for week one, just want to go over this flag because I know there'll be a lot of questions about it. It's my World of Warcraft flag. I am kind of a nerd because it's my group, the Horde. Yeah, I'm a nerd. Not much explaining I can do for that. Getting right into it, I'm really excited for this college football slate this week one. This is probably the best college football slate for a week one I've seen in a long time. Usually you have your stinker games. It's a lot of non-conference. The big schools will play small schools and FCS schools, and usually you have like one or two big games. This year, I think with the Big Ten scheduling, Big Ten conference games week one helped a lot. And then there's a lot of good matchups that I really like, and the board is really good. So let's get into some of my picks. So very first coming up here, I got Ohio State minus 13.5. I think Minnesota's coming off a really down year for the program after the huge highs that PJ Fleck took them up to. So they're getting a little bit more respect than they deserve, probably. Ohio State's bringing a new quarterback in CJ Stroud, but that receiving core that's there is ridiculous, and I think that they're going to be enough to make him comfortable right away, and he won't struggle taking over that offense. Ryan Day is such a good coach, and they recruit so well that they're going to have those players in there for them ready week one. I don't see it being a huge problem, and I think they will dominate Minnesota. And you gotta love that hook at minus 13.5. You look when you're looking at sports betting numbers, you look for numbers. Obviously for football, those big numbers are going to be like 3, 7, 10, 14. Anything that is a football number score can add up easily. So coming in under 2 touchdowns on minus 13.5, I think is a really good value. Moving on to the next game, got North Carolina minus 5.5. I really like Sam Howell. I think he's like the perfect college quarterback. He could do it with his legs. He has a great arm. I think Mac Brown's been one of the most underappreciated coaches in the college football for a long time. He always brings it in recruiting. He always has a good team around him, and I think North Carolina's been on the up and up here soon. Last year they had a couple disappointing losses, but I think this is the year they finally put it together. Virginia Tech's kind of been down recently. I think they're going to be in the middle of the pack. I don't think they're going to be anything special. I'm thinking 6-6, maybe 7-5, probably make a lower bowl game. And fun fact, Sam Howell's thrown for 8 touchdowns with no picks and 600 yards against Virginia Tech in his 2 career games. So he likes playing against the Hokies, and I expect that to continue. And I got Northwestern minus 3.5. So these are 2 programs. Northwestern's playing Michigan State, by the way. Northwestern and Michigan State are going 2 different directions. Michigan State was a powerhouse about 5-10 years ago. Ever since, they've just been on a downward spiral. And I think Northwestern in the last couple of years, they've always been a solid program under Pat Fitzgerald. But it seems like in the last couple of years, especially last year, making the Big Ten championship game, they've kind of taken it to the next level. And they're getting those NFL draft picks like Rashawn Slater and other players that have been drafted there recently. So they're getting the recruits, they're getting the good guys, and their defense is insane. Michigan State has not had a good offense in a long time. I think they're going to struggle against Northwestern's defense, and I think Northwestern's offense will actually be decent this year. I think Pat Fitzgerald has finally put an offense around that program and that defense that will make them contenders in the Big Ten again. Then I got Appalachian State minus 9.5. I was kind of surprised when I saw this line just because of how good Appalachian State's been recently. They're one of those group of 5 schools that's always battling for a top 25 spot. They're always doing really well in the conference, and playing a group of 5 school like East Carolina, who historically is a really bad football program. great party school, but terrible football program. Also, like I was talking about with the hook, at -9.5, you get that 10-point hook, so they can win by a touchdown or a field goal. I think that's a pretty good value play. And yeah, I actually really like the Appalachian State play. Excuse me. Shout out Sips and Ames. Great bar. Great bar. And moving on to NC State, -19.5. NC State was a sneaky good team last year. They're in the ACC, so one of those conferences that doesn't get a whole lot of respect as a Power 5. But they actually, towards the end of the year, started playing well and coming into their own. And UCF is a terrible football program. Last year, the only win was against the Citadel, who you might recognize from playing Alabama all the time and losing by 70 points. They beat the Citadel by like 14, 21 points maybe. And then they lost other 8 games, and there were some bad losses in there. -19.5 at home, week 1. I don't think there's anything to overthink here. Take NC State. Duke -5.5. So this one was a pretty simple pick for me. Just they beat Charlotte last year. The team they're playing 53-19. And unless anyone's heard anything about Charlotte, I looked into their team, and it's not like they're got a bunch of 5-stars in the offseason. I think this game should be pretty straightforward. -5.5 is pretty low. That's just a touchdown, less than a touchdown favorite. And yeah, I take Duke. Moving on to Kansas State -2.5. So Kansas State plays Stanford. It should be a really entertaining game. Stanford's one of those teams that's always been good, but in the last couple of years they've kind of been not getting the recruits that they're used to getting, and also kind of been struggling in the Pac-12, which is maybe the worst Power 5 conference. Kansas State's always been, solid. They're always a 6-6 or 7-5, 8-4. And this year, bringing back Skylar Thompson, I think it's going to be huge. They're going to have that. They're going to have a lot of continuity starting week 1, and I think the Kansas State will be one of those teams that surprises a couple people this year. I could see them breaking the top 25 and maybe upsetting a team like Oklahoma, and I really hope not, but I could see Iowa State loss, unfortunately. So yeah, Kansas State -2.5. I expect them to get their season off to a good start. Moving on to Oklahoma -31.5. That's a big spread, but Oklahoma's playing Tulane. And if you know the history of Oklahoma, they're pretty good at blowing out non-conference teams. You look up week 1 and 2, they're always blowing out teams by 30, 40, 50 points. The game was originally supposed to be played in Tulane, but obviously with the hurricane going on down there, they had to move it to Norman. So that added fact also is going to help them a bunch. And bringing back Spencer Rattler for the second year. It's the first time that Lincoln Riley's had a starting quarterback come back for a second year. And you've seen what he's done with all his other quarterbacks. So could be dangerous this year with Oklahoma. And something that they don't get enough credit for, they've gotten a lot better on defense. So Oklahoma -31.5. It's a lot of points, but I do expect them to cover that. Next pick, I got Indiana +3.5 versus Iowa. So Indiana is ranked for the first time in a long time in the preseason poll at 12 this year, and I actually agree with the polls. They're bringing back their stud quarterback Michael Penix, and people kind of forget how good Indiana was last year with him. They had almost beat Ohio State with him on the field, and unfortunately he got injured in that game and ended up losing. But they were winning in that game, and they had Ohio State in the ropes, honestly, for a team that went to the national championship. And then getting to Iowa, I mean, you're going to get what you always get from Iowa. It's going to be a decent team. They're going to play great offensive linemen, great defense, great running game, average quarterback play. But I think Indiana could be a great team this year, not just a good team. So I really like that +3.5. You get in that hook at +3.5, so Iowa could still win by a field goal, and you're fine. Or 1 or 2 points, obviously. And if you're feeling bold, maybe even sprinkle the money line. I think that's a good upset money line pick. I could definitely see that happening week 1. Personally, for me, I'd like to see Iowa win because then they'll be ranked higher for when they play Iowa State week 2. But going off of my betting knowledge, I would take Indiana plus 3.5. Moving on to Maryland moneyline. So Maryland football I kind of fell in love with last year, watching because I really like Tua's brother, Talia. I'm not going to try to pronounce the last name. It's going to be embarrassing. But whenever he was in last year, that offense was just on a different level. And then also, ever since Dana Holgorsen left West Virginia, they really haven't been the same team. They haven't really been competitive in the Big 12, and I don't see any reason for them to be good on the road going to Maryland. So I'm going to play the Maryland money line at plus 122. This is a good money line upset pick, especially getting a home team in week 1 is huge. And like I said, Talia, he's a stud. Moving on to Cincinnati minus 22.5. So, Cincinnati, if you guys remember last year, was on the edge of the college football playoffs, trying to be the first group of 5 team to make it. And they're returning pretty much their entire roster. So they're going to be on a mission to become that first group of 5 team to make the CFP. They have 2 huge non-conference games against Indiana and Notre Dame. So they're going to want to get those wins, and if they can win the rest of their games, they should make it, assuming we can get a 1-loss like SEC school like Georgia or something like that. I think CFP might take them over a 1-loss Georgia or something like that. But one of the ways you get the CFP's attention is by winning big. They have a really good chance to do that against Miami of Ohio, who's obviously their okay team. Nothing special, but if Cincinnati wants to be taken seriously, they should cover the spread week 1. Moving on to probably the biggest game of the year, if you look at, especially for non-conference, is the Clemson-Georgia game. And I'm going to pick Clemson. I really like their defense this year. They're bringing back that linebacker. Trying to think of his name. I think he's 47. But anyway, he's a stud. And their secondary is good. Their D-line is going to be insane this year. And then on offense, I really think DJ, and again, I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name, is really good. He's going to exceed the expectations that even Clemson fans might have for him. I think he's going to replace T-Law pretty well as he could. And let's be honest, Georgia doesn't really show up for big games. They haven't in a long time. Every time they get their chance, they seem to flounder. And I don't see any reason why Dabo won't win week 1. The guy wins big games. He's done it his entire career at Clemson. And I think that'll continue on Saturday. Moving on to the Illinois. Illinois is playing UTSA. So they're going to be Illinois minus 4.5. And I was huge on Illinois plus 7 last week. I even took them money line. And excuse me. I just think Brett Bielema is a really good coach, especially in the Big Ten. He knows how to win Big Ten games. He knows how to recruit in that area. And he's got an experienced Illinois roster. He's not walking into a situation where he had to replace everybody. He has some good players that are left over from the previous coach. And I think that will help him a lot. I could see them being a sneaky good team in the Big Ten. I could see them winning 6 or 7, maybe even 8 games. And to start that, they're going to want to beat UTSA at home. So give them a 4.5. They give less than a touchdown. I like that line. Go Illini. Moving on to, I got LSU and UCLA here. That was a big game. I think people are a little too high on UCLA coming off of week 0, after beating Hawaii pretty handily. Yeah, they have Chip Kelly, and yeah, they looked impressive, but I don't know. I'm just not sold on UCLA as a team until they have beat someone of LSU's caliber. And when it comes down to it, LSU has the conference strength. They have the recruiting pipeline. Ed Ogeron has shown that he's a really good recruiter, and I think they have a really good roster every year full of draft picks. And for me, it's going to be a talent thing. LSU's talent is a lot better than UCLA's. I think having something to play for, especially after the hurricane that happened in Louisiana. I think that will play a factor. I think LSU's going to come outplay motivated. UCLA, we'll see. I think they might come out flat after beating the brakes off Hawaii, and go Tigers. My last pick on my card is Cal -3. So Cal's a team that's a little confusing. They play in the Pac-12, one of the weaker conferences. But they beat one of the best teams in the conference last year, Oregon. And I think they're going to continue that momentum this year and start off, the year with a pretty easy game against Nevada at home. Nevada hasn't been good for a while. Group of 5 team, they're only giving up 3 points. So I think they're going to win. So if I think they're going to win, I think 3 points is pretty easy spread to cover. So give me Cal -3. So that's all my picks for week 1. I think it's been a really fun week 1. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Trying to see if this is something I should continue doing. It's something I've been thinking about doing for a while. I'm not the best at speaking, but when it comes to sports, I could talk forever. So if this is something that is interesting to you guys, I don't like to just put my picks out on Twitter and Facebook and not give an explanation for why I like them. I'm not just coming up with these things off random. I do my research, I look at stats, I watch the games, so I always have reasons for my picks. I like being able to tell you guys those reasons. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. DM me on Twitter. It's probably the best place to reach me. Or you can comment on the YouTube, and I'll check the comments and reply. So thank you for listening to this first inaugural G-Money Sports Pick'em show. Hopefully, I'll be back to do more of these, and hopefully everyone has a good week 1. And hopefully my picks do good. So, have a good weekend, everyone. Thanks for watching, and enjoy that football is back.